evening. We hope that all of our viewers are safe tonight and well wherever they are. And we are so happy to welcome you to this virtual forum with Congressman Stephen Lynch. My name is Dr. Aminah Pilgrim. My full-time job is I'm a senior lecturer at UMass Boston, where I lecture in the fields of Africana Studies, Women's Studies, and also Critical Ethnic Studies. And tonight, the hat that I'm wearing is as moderator of this wonderful panel. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Bishop Tony Branch, to introduce himself, and then I'll give a little bit of the ground rules for tonight's discussion.
Well, good evening, everyone. And many of you know me out there, Bishop Tony Branch. I'm your chair of diversity for the city of Brockton. I'm also vice chair of the Southeastern Regional School Committee. I wear many hats, also as the executive vice president, or the first vice president of the NAACP. So I'm glad to be here with Aminah and Congressman Lynch. Thank you.
Thank you. So Bishop Branch and Congressman, here is how tonight is going to flow. Congressman, you have 2 minutes to introduce yourself with an opening statement. And then we'll begin with questions, and Bishop Branch will ask the first question, to which you'll have a 2-minute space for a response. And then we'll allow about 1 minute for follow-up questions, but the two of us will go back and forth and engage you in a robust dialogue. So please go ahead and give your opening statement.
Well, thank you, Doctor, and thank you, Bishop. I appreciate the opportunity to join you. I should explain to your viewers, however, that I'm in the middle of a boat series. Under the rules, I cannot do this inside the building in the Capitol, so I'm out on the balcony. So technically I'm outside, but the weather is pretty threatening here. It's always been an enormous honor for me to represent the city of Brockton in the United States Congress. I am now in my, beginning my 20th year in Congress. Actually, when I first became a congressman, Brockton was split. So part of it was in one district, part of it was in another. But I had a long and meaningful conversation with then Mayor Jack Unitz, and he told me about how difficult it was to have no one there full time, because Mr. Moakley had a huge district and Mr. Delahunt had a huge district, and he asked me if I would go to bat for Brockton in redistricting to have it all put in one district, my district. So we did that through the redistricting process. And ever since then, I've had a full-time office. You may know, I know Tony knows Shana Barnes, who runs my Brockton office, but we have had a full-time office in Brockton for the first time. And it's worked very, very well in terms of constituent services. Spending 4 days a week down here in Washington, I really needed a full-time person there all the time to deal with the many, many issues that come up in Brockton on a daily basis. In terms of the Haitian community, I was newly the congressman for Brockton when we had the Haitian earthquake. And so I went to Haiti. That was my first trip to Haiti, working with the refugee population there. We had many, especially children, refugees coming from Haiti at the time of the earthquake. It's really when I first got engaged with the Haitian church down in Brockton and the bishops. But I'm very proud of the work that Shana did, working and not only connecting those Haitian refugees with the Brockton community and the Haitian church, but also there was a real struggle in terms of Brockton taking all these new students in, which were not budgeted. So we had a real scramble. We used federal money and state money to be able to welcome these children and get them in the right grades, and try to take to mitigate some of the impacts of what they were going through, which was horrible. So been very active here in terms of the Haitian initiatives that we've had on TPS. As you know, we had temporary protective status for many years that was not challenged throughout the Obama administration. It was fairly easy for us to to make the case that the conditions in Haiti would not allow people to go back there and have any semblance of a normal life and a productive and safe life. But when President Trump came in, that all changed, obviously. Number one, he cut our appropriation for, his proposed budget for Haiti was reduced by 34%, which is devastating. They rely heavily on the resources that we give to the government there. And so we're still fighting that out. And also, he tried to remove TPS status. He extended it by 6 months. Normally, it goes in 2-year increments. But when President Trump came in, he wanted a 6 month. He said that the conditions no longer exist in Haiti that would warrant anybody from being a refugee, which is totally not in line with the facts on the ground. If he had gone there like I had and seen the impact of that earthquake on water and sewer and housing, he would not have made that statement. But he extended it for 6 months. Now we had to go to court to prevent them from removing TPS, which we did. And we actually sponsored a bill that, rather than fight this fight every 6 months, we sponsored a bill with Friends of Haiti here in Congress to extend it for 6 years, because we thought that was a reasonable period of time within which there might be improvement enough and would at least give continuity to people's lives so that they wouldn't be in constant fear of losing their temporary protected status. So it's been an honor for me to represent the city of Brockton. I've been very engaged with the new mayor, getting with the Brockton Community Health Center with Sue Joss, getting masks and PPE and face shields and all the things that we were lacking when this coronavirus hit. I've tried to meet the high expectations of the people of Brockton in my time here in Congress. So I don't want to take up all the time, but why don't I turn it over to Tony? Thank you.
Well, Congressman, let's talk about that a little bit. So you and I know that we've been around the block for a while. The number one issue with respect to, there's 3 issues, but the number one issue right now across the gamut with Americans is COVID-19. Specifically, with respect to the coronavirus, the data suggests that has been released across the country that 60% of the deaths that are associated with that virus are African American, people of African descent. Let me ask you, is the Congress doing enough to support all Americans with respect to COVID-19?
Well, I think that we're trying to catch up, right? Because there was a huge deficit in the Black community in terms of healthcare, and the onset of coronavirus amplified that. It demonstrated the disparities that were there. But with the Congressional Black Caucus, they helped us write. They were front and center in terms of writing the CARES Act. And Maxine Waters, I give her great credit in terms of, we didn't give her everything we wanted, but it was $1,200 per individual, and then $500 per dependent. We're trying to get $2,000 for each person and $1,200 for each dependent now in the HEROES Act. But I give great credit to, God bless them, John Lewis, James Clyburn, and Maxine Waters for their leadership on that. And we did make an earnest effort to look at the situation in the Black community. Look at the situation in large urban centers. Look at the high proportion of Black community health needs that are provided by community health centers. So we gave a huge chunk of money and a big plus up to community health centers because we felt that they would be the ones that would be testing and would be diagnosing and providing PPE to people who needed it. So it's been a real challenge, but I think the first tranche of the CARES Act was what we call staying alive money. And now the next tranche is really to help Black businesses that were not in a position to take advantage of the first rollout of the CARES Act to make sure that those businesses also get to participate. They didn't have the relationships with the big banks. So when we pushed the money out to the big banks, they were left behind. And many of them were smaller business, salons and barbershops and gas stations that they didn't have the back office that could go through all the legal requirements for getting the PPP money. So we've tried to redouble our efforts. Even environmentally, we saw that there were disparate impacts on the Black community. So what I did on the surface transportation bill, so I've been getting zero emission buses for BAT, the Brockton Area Transit, for years. But I only get one or two every couple of years. And by the time I get the next one, the old ones are getting old and they have to be retired. This year, we put $1.7 billion across the country for a lot of urban areas that have these old fleets of diesel buses that are blowing. You get communities that already have high asthma rates, like Brockton, high respiratory disease rates, like Brockton. So this year, I was able to earmark at least 10% of all that money must go to minority areas, low-income areas that might have disparate impact in their health conditions from the get-go. So we're trying everything. We're scrambling to mitigate the disparities that exist. And right now, so we passed the HEROES Act 2 months ago. It's been sitting on Mitch McConnell's desk. He's been flatly opposed to it for a long, long time. However, now that the southern states are all lit up with coronavirus, he has shown at least some receptivity to what we're doing, but we still have to negotiate the numbers. There's money in there for unemployment, for stimulus checks, for aid to the states, so we keep the teachers working, we keep the fire and police and EMS working, and we also make sure that we provide the hospitals and healthcare systems in these cities the resources they need to survive.
So, Congressman, the second issue that I wanted to touch on, and we're going to go to Aminah, is that racial justice is the second issue right now in this country. Yeah. We need to be pointed in our questions specifically to you. You're a white male, but I got to ask the question, do Black lives matter?
Oh my God. Oh my God, yes. Oh my God, yes. The fact that we asked that question is proof enough. So I've gone, because I'm back and forth to Washington, I've only gone to about 8 or 10 of the Black Lives Matter vigils and marches and prayer meetings. And so, but I've got to speak at half a dozen of them. And, what's been amazing, and I talked about this to John Lewis, he had a phone call with the Congressional Black Caucus maybe 3 weeks before he passed. And, he said, and he's been working on this issue for 60 years, right? And he said, one thing that really struck me, he said, it makes my heart sing to see all these white kids out here marching together with the young Black activists. He said, we never had that. We never had that in the 50s and 60s. He said, these are huge crowds. And he said, they're really making the difference. And he was absolutely right. These young activists, I refer to them in my remarks, in my speeches, as the new abolitionists. People that don't know the history don't realize that it was a very small group of abolitionists that got the movement going against slavery. It was accepted for thousands of years. And it was, people like, Sojourner Truth and Frederick Douglass and William Lloyd Garrison and young John Quincy Adams that stepped out and said, hey, this is wrong. You cannot own human beings. And it was the power and the righteousness of their cause and their argument that turned slowly, gradually, turned the opinion around to where we fought a civil war over that. And so the young people of today saw things that were accepted and said, that's wrong, we should not accept that. And I'm just praying that we don't lose this moment without making meaningful changes. I was a proud original co-sponsor of the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. That's not enough, you know, but that deals with that issue that we saw in Minneapolis. You know, they had on their books in Minneapolis a use of force policy that authorized a police officer to render a detainee unconscious on the street. He was authorized to not only to immobilize. There were two policies in that use of force protocol. One was, you know, if someone was out of control, they might hurt themselves, you could immobilize them. But the second one clearly authorized the officers to render a person unconscious, which is, they can't even do that in the special forces in Afghanistan. That's against the rules of engagement, yet they had it on the books in Minneapolis. So in the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, we banned that across the board. Unlike the Republican proposal that suggested some things. We wiped out no-knock warrants that led to the death of Breonna Taylor. Unlike our bill, the Republican proposal just said, well, if you use a no-knock warrant, you got to file a report afterwards. That would not have saved Breonna Taylor. They went in and gunned her down, an innocent woman in her own home. So we made a lot of changes. We changed the protocol for training police officers across the country. So, but that bill too is sitting on McConnell's desk. So we need to keep working that.
Well, and it's fair to say there's been movement with respect to police reform in the Massachusetts legislature. The Commonwealth is doing some work around that. Aminah, please.
To follow up on some of the things that you've raised and your reference to the icon John Lewis, I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about this issue of Black Lives Matter and the double pandemic. In terms of Brockton, we know that Black and brown lives means many immigrants. Some of them are undocumented, and many of them are really still suffering with all of the different ways that inequity shows up in the city of Brockton. And with all of the measures that you just discussed, I wonder if you can talk a little bit more about any particular attention being paid to making sure that those most vulnerable members of the city's population and of your constituency, can be protected during this time.
Right. Well, first of all, when we were arguing the CARES Act initially, the president was saying the country is going to be open for business by Easter. So that did not happen. But we were saying we need till January 1st. And then the compromise that was necessary, because we had to get aid out there, and it was myself and many of the members of the Congressional Black Caucus were on the same page. We settled for July 31st because that's the best we could do. Otherwise, the bill would have been tied up forever and nobody would have got any benefits. So we rushed it out the door. We settled for the end of July, beginning of August. But that's where we are right now. So we're in negotiations. But in that package, and again, Maxine Waters, she was one of the principal negotiators and organizers. I'm on her committee. I work with her a lot. She was the one that correctly, identified the gap and the disparity in the Black community. So, with the help of Karen Bass, who's the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, they were front and center in negotiating our package. So, from healthcare, daycare, if we're going to start to move people back into employment, then daycare has to be part of the solution. Testing, expanding healthcare. The Republicans are complaining that this is a relief package for urban America, which it is. That's where most of this impact is being felt on a daily basis, largely in African American and communities of color. So every single item in there is targeted toward the need of people that you know, people who are struggling, people that don't have the resources, people don't have the networks and insurance that others might have. So we're trying to make sure that we plug in the Black community to make sure that they are reached this time, because in that first CARES Act that we pushed out, it was impossible to foresee some of the gaps that persisted. We gave all the money out to the Small Business Association, but many of our small minority-owned businesses didn't have ongoing relationships with the Small Business Association. They were too small, you know, like mom and pop operations, variety stores, salons, you know, barbershops, you know, gas stations. And the minimum loan amount that was offered by the Federal Reserve was like $1 million. So, you know, you can't. I mean, that was just too intimidating for a small business to take a loan for $1 million. Are you kidding me? So again, with the help of Maxine Waters, I know I'm beating the drum on her, but give credit where credit is due. She cut it down to like $250,000, the minimum loan, which made it much more reachable for minority-owned businesses. Also, we lowered the interest rate, so it's basically, you know, like 2% or something over prime or something like that. But extreme, you know, the interest rate is very, very affordable. And we lengthened the time period for paying that back, because if you're cutting hair, that's a lot of haircuts before you can pay back $250,000, you know. So we lengthened the payback time for those loans. You know, there are a lot of nonprofits that were struggling, big nonprofits, substance abuse counselors and businesses, you know, that did not have the resources to continue without the, you know, the steady flow of resources. So we made sure we targeted them. Sue Joss, you know, I was on the phone basically every other day with her, trying to guide her through, you know, and she, if you walk through her lobby any day of the week, she is, you know, she's probably got 70% her clientele, her patients are probably people of color. And, you know, I worked with her on her expansion. I remember going through there and it was really, really crowded. We had to build a new health center down there, you know, just to accommodate everybody, because we had a huge growing population, especially kids. And we didn't have the doctors or the facility to really address that. So, so we've addressed a lot of that in the bill. Now,
thank you so much.
the negotiation negotiation is ongoing, though, Doctor. Just so you know, so we're back and forth with McConnell's office now. So we're trying to work out this deal to make sure that people are cared for.
So as a follow-up to that, you mentioned children, and you're talking about small business owners and working class folks. We know that a lot of women have been primarily, you know, affected by these double pandemics as well, especially women of color. So I wonder if you could talk for a moment, excuse the children in the background, about, you know, a very practical dilemma that's on the minds of everybody right now, which is school
Right.
openings.
Yeah.
And yeah, what is your assessment of the situation, and how are you contributing to making sure that our children will be safe in their schooling in the fall?
That's a great question. What we did was we set aside $1 trillion, for states and cities and towns to be able to open up school, pay teachers, make sure that we have the testing, because, Doctor, as you know, it's a much different situation in Florida, in Texas, and Arizona as it is in Massachusetts. We're doing much, much, much better, and I give Governor Baker a fair amount of credit for the work he's done in you know, making sure that, you know, we had mask requirements and social distancing. They closed a lot of businesses. They stopped a lot of those mass gatherings and things like that went on in places like Florida. So that money is there. But we have argued that almost every school district's going to have to make their own decision on that. We can't just do a one size fits all, because I think McConnell and President Trump want to just open it up, and they're putting incentives to have people open up the school system when that is not safe. So that's why we thought daycare has to be part of this, because we funded for Massachusetts, I think it's $650,000 that we put in just for daycare, just to get those daycare operations back up and running. And then we put $1 trillion in for the states to get teachers back to work, school nurses back to work, and do the necessary testing, because we're going to have to be very careful about this. But we're trying to do this state by state and school district by school district. So we're going to have to talk to Mayor Sullivan and figure out what's the safe and prudent thing to do in Brockton, because it may not happen in September. We might have to push it back to October, middle of October, depending on what the prognosis is. But it has to be a science-based decision. As a doctor, you know that, we'll just have to listen to the medical experts and do what's best for our children and for our families.
Congressman, I wanted to get back to the issue of healthcare. It's no secret, and you're on the record. But your opponent has been raising this issue with respect to your vote against the ACA. As you probably have seen, I'm sure your campaign has seen those advertisements that are blanketing Facebook. Do you regret not voting for the ACA, the Obamacare, that has been so well received by the American population, whether you're Black or whether you're white?
I'm not so sure about that. There's a whole bunch of people trying to go with payer, and that's a repeat. That single payer would completely repeal root and branch. It would eliminate the Affordable Care Act. So there's a whole bunch of people riled up and want to get rid of that. First of all, the first Affordable Care Act, our bill, the Democratic bill, I voted for, right? Because it had a public option. It didn't give an antitrust exemption to the insurance companies, and it didn't tax union health benefits. So I voted for that. When it went over to the Senate, and remember, Scott Brown had been elected, so the Senate got to rewrite the bill, and they took out the public option, which we desperately needed and still need. They gave the insurance companies an antitrust exemption so that they can act in restraint of trade, stop competition, and raise prices. And thirdly, they put a tax in on union health benefits so that the people who stood out on a picket line so they could get better health care, they were going to be punished for doing that. So I voted against the Republican version of the Affordable Care Act that came out of the Senate. Now, I do think it's fixable. And I sat with the president and I said, look, I cannot support the way this bill is written. I said,
President Obama?
President Obama. And I said, I cannot support this the way it's written. I said, but if it passes, I will do everything I can to make the fixes that are necessary, number one. And number two, I will not vote to repeal this. I will not vote to repeal it. I'll vote to fix it, because I pointed out those three things. And he knew the bill. He knew it inside out anyway. But I have voted 65 times in the House against Republican efforts to repeal this. What disappoints me is, after going through all of that, now the single payer people, the Medicare for all people, want to completely obliterate. They want to obliterate the Affordable Care Act. They want to get rid of it root and branch. There won't be anything left of that if they get their way. And I just think that eliminating the private health insurance for 157 million Americans, many who like their health insurance and appreciate the care they're getting, that puts them in a if you have a sick child and you've got decent health care, you don't want your health care to be removed. And that's what would happen here. So I'm proud that I'm trying to fix the Affordable Care Act. And I think we have a lot of people who are on board with that are against ripping out the Affordable Care Act. You know, Speaker Pelosi, Joe Biden, they're not in favor of Medicare for all. They're in favor, like me, of fixing the Affordable Care Act. And we you know, so we've done bills like that in the House to improve on the Affordable Care Act, not get rid of it.
But it's fair to say, let's just go back to what the American people really love about it. They love the precondition regulation, that if you have precondition, everybody's covered. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, of course. But that's only a small part of it. Yeah. Insurance companies can't say that it was a pre-existing condition. That was in the bill I voted for, right, in the House, and then it went over to the Senate and it stayed in. But a lot of other good stuff came out. That was the problem.
So can you clarify for the voters again, because now I just got a little bit confused on something. So if we went Medicare for all, in order for them to get to Medicare for all, you would actually have to completely scrap ACA?
Right, because
so that means even preconditions that are under the private insurance companies are gone?
No. So the whole system that the Affordable Care Act set up is, and I've got to go in and vote again, is based on people going online, selecting an insurance company that works for them, which is way too expensive right now, and that's what everybody's choking on. So that whole system goes away. All those, all of that goes away. All the private health insurance plans, Blue Cross Blue Shield, whatever plans you have, those go away under Medicare for all. So it's very, very complicated. It's not everybody doesn't go on Medicare. Medicare changes as well, because Medicare right now is partly a public program, but there's also advantage programs that fill in the gaps that Medicare doesn't cover. I have to run in and vote. I'll be right back. I'm sorry. I can't miss a vote. I'm sorry.
No worries.
Thank you.
So he said, so the congressman has to run in and vote. That was interesting.
Yeah.
And guess what? Aminah, and he's a really good runner. Wow. So yeah, I was asking him the question regarding the ACA because his opponent, Robbie, have you seen the advertisement? Mm-hmm. That he's running that advertisement that he does a small snippet of the congressman saying that, yes, I voted against Obamacare, whatever it was. And it seems to be that he's bringing it up as a sticking point. So I just wanted to get clarification on that because he was the only member of the Massachusetts delegation that voted against it. So, but that's where we are. It looks like we're doing very good questioning. Look, we have about 22 minutes left, and we'll see if the congressman comes back. But so there's some House votes that are ongoing, and we'll just keep stay tuning. Just so I guess I'll take advantage of what we call under the rules personal privilege. So we got a John Lewis tribute that's happening. I am John Lewis at Brockton City Hall Plaza, beginning at 7 p.m. tomorrow. So we're hoping that people can come out for that. Well, Aminah, what's going on in your world?
Well, I'm gonna throw the question back to you because I know you're moderating that event in Brockton tomorrow to honor John Lewis.
Yes.
I love the name of the event, and I know a little bit about your background. So I wonder if you could tell the viewers for a moment, what John Lewis means or meant to you, and give us a preview of what to expect for tomorrow.
Yeah. So I'm going to say, as an African American male, that grew up in a time where when I went to middle school and high school, we were frequently called by our white cousins. And if you know anything about me, one of the things I've always described, I always describe white folks as our white cousin because we know by DNA we all actually are one. We're a sliver of difference. With that said, is for me, what was very important that as a young 23-year-old, that he was able to so eloquently talk about civil rights and the importance of making change in this country. So he was an example to all of us. But not only that, the fact that he kept up the good fight for 60 something years or almost 60 years. A lot of people would have given up, but John Lewis never did that. And one of the other things that people don't talk about is how humble he was in his spirit, that this man was somebody, you got to remember, John had Rockstone at his head, and they talked about today, I know that you watched the memorial, he almost, you know, a pipe was going to be hit on his head. I mean, really went through some extreme violence, and he still maintained nonviolent. He's an example to all of us. What I've always described him at over the years as the last line of the civil rights movement. And some people may push back on that, but I'm not gonna, I think that that's the best description of him, that he really kept up the good fight for justice for all. But let me tell you something, it wasn't only civil rights. And I'm glad that they mentioned that today at his memorial. He fought for LGBTQ, he fought for disability rights. So he was on top, women's rights, he was on top of everything that was equal in civil rights. And so we're gonna celebrate him tomorrow. We're gonna celebrate him tomorrow as us showing an example that I am John Lewis, because we all benefit from his blood, his sweat, and his pain. We all benefit from his peace. And hopefully we will carry the torch now that he's resting in peace.
Thank you.
I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, sure.
I can go on and on and on.
Sure. Well,
Aminah, who do we have left really?
Well, I was gonna comment on that because I won't push you on what you said. I mean, that's an elegant tribute to him. But I do think that there are still many icons, particularly women. That's okay. Women of the movement. We saw, a few of them speak today at the memorial, and yes. I think that folks forget that many of those women leaders are still around. So we were filling our time, Congressman, by reflecting.
Thank you, Doctor. I apologize.
No, that's okay.
I cannot miss votes. That's one of the things. Yeah?
That's right, and the viewers get to see you hard at work. So
we didn't know you could run like that. Now we know something about you.
Well, thank you, thank you.
Yeah,
we might get a rainstorm. I'm not sure. This is fairly threatening. I'm not sure if you can see that.
Oh wow! Yeah, the cumulus. What do they call them? Cumulus cloud. I forgot from ROTC. So Congressman, we were just talking about John Lewis, and I was going to give a little bit more of a synopsis of my perspective of how he's contributed to the civil rights movement, equal rights movement. But in saying that, one of the things I wanted to get out of you is this issue of Donald Trump getting on Twitter talking about no more low-income families in suburbs. Yeah. What can you do as a congressman to just begin stop this dismantling of him removing these regulations around us being able to go into these communities?
Well, what he's doing by executive order, it's difficult to stop, right? He has already threatened to repeal and has started to unravel a lot of the executive orders that President Obama put in place, from affordable housing to environmental standards that are meant to protect the people that you and I worry about every single day. So it's difficult. We can challenge the legality because some of the things he has suggested and tried to do have been flat out illegal, and we've been able to have him overturned in court. But it's a full-time job. There's an election in November, and hopefully people see the impact of his policies and what he's been doing. There's a lot of energy out there. I feel good about that, but that's the ultimate solution here in terms of, there's no reasoning. It's been very difficult. He hasn't, we used to have the ability to work with moderates on the other side, right. But yeah. They're all in fear now. They're all in fear. Those that are left, many left in the midterm 2 years ago. They could not work, in conjunction with this president, so they left. But that left a lot of extreme members on the other side. So very difficult environment to work in.
So tell me a little bit about, so that there's a rent and foreclosure moratorium. Specifically, there's one under the CARES Act, but specifically in the Commonwealth, we have one. affordable housing, rent control, et cetera, are conversations that have been happening, as you know, for many, many, many years. But we know that
Yeah.
there's going to be tremendous economic pressure on families, especially if there's no way to get kids fully back into school. Tell us a little bit
Right.
about, what are your thoughts around rents?
Yeah, so no, that's great, Tony. You're spot on. You're anticipating. We actually passed the HEROES Act, which extends to January 1st the moratorium on evictions and rent increases. We actually have some Brockton landlords who, even though that was expiring, said, we don't care that the law is expiring. We're still not going to raise rents. We're still not going to evict people for not paying rent. So it was good to see that, people doing the right thing. But so we've got a moratorium on rent increases and also evictions. We've also got a provision in there that that the credit rating agencies cannot mark you down. In other words, they can't ruin your credit rating during this period because of the pandemic, and you're missing a mortgage payment or you're missing a rent payment. They cannot trash your credit rating, which would prevent you from getting loans and conducting business, as a result of what's going on. So that's in our bill as well. But again, so the rent moratorium and the mortgage moratorium, I think, are good until September. But after that point, it's going to be tooth and nail. So that's why we're in negotiations with McConnell right now over there in the Senate to try to come up with a package that would continue the unemployment benefits, give another stimulus, give the extra $600, that's in our bill, and also hold people harmless until we get out of this pandemic.
So, but Congressman, one of the problems that with the families that I work with, that I talk to on a daily basis, their concern is they appreciate the moratoriums, both on the foreclosure and on the rent, but they're saying that, Bishop, I'm going to have a delinquency. I'm going to have an arrearage. Where's the money going to come to help those families? Are there federal dollars that will be able to maybe infuse into the RAF program? I don't know. I'm asking the questions. What are your thoughts around that?
Well, we're trying to hold everybody harmless down the line. So okay, this is how it works. So we told the renter, you don't have to pay your rent. Then we told the landlord, you don't have to pay your mortgage. Then we told the mortgage holder, you don't have to pay the mortgage servicer. Then we told the mortgage servicer, you don't have to pay the stockholders, the shareholders. So, and then we pushed out about $1 trillion to try to cover the cost of all of that, so that no one, from the renter to the shareholder who invested in the building that the person is living in, they're all held harmless. It's basically a big timeout. That's what we're looking to do here.
Congressman, I'm willing to tell you, we are glad you've said that on the record. I can tell you for a fact that people are not understanding that.
Yeah.
I have people that are really, really scared, saying that I'm going to owe this landlord $3,000 for $5,000. So I'm glad that you said that.
Yeah. So and what we'll do is we'll try to provide a bridge. In other words, you get this chunk of money that you owed, but you're out of work. The jobs have gone. So now you're gonna have to pay $5, $10 or whatever for the next X number of years to try to catch up. But we're also holding the landlord harmless and the mortgage company and the bank harmless, so that they don't have to eat this. So the Federal Reserve came out with a program for $600 billion to try to help that whole chain of custody, basically, beginning with the renter and ending up with the shareholder for the mortgage servicing company. So, and I got to admit, they've been very aggressive. Jerome Powell, the chair of the Fed, he has stepped up and tried to accommodate everyone. We might have some rain here in a minute. We'll see.
I was going to say, it looks like the weather's picking up, and we don't want you to be outdoors in the storm. We're getting ready to wind down anyway. So maybe, to work our way towards closing, I wonder if you could tell us, one, how you've been affected on a personal level by these twin pandemics that we're seeing, this historical moment that many of us have never seen in our lives. And then two, go ahead and give some closing words or reflections for the viewers and for your potential voters.
Sure. Well, so I've got a young daughter who's in college, so she's down at Elam University in North Carolina. Tried to come home, but there were about 150 people on the plane, and she got nervous about it. Nobody had masks on, so she's still down there. My wife and I, my mother-in-law who lives with us, she's a Gold Star sister. Her brother was killed during World War II. She's 95 today. It's her birthday. But she lives with us. So we've been very careful, with me flying back and forth constantly in planes, going to health centers, going to hospitals. I wave into my mother-in-law's apartment, but I don't go in and give her a hug or spend any time with her. My wife is the only one that goes in and out. And, so that's sort of the personal dimension for me. The situation here in Congress is very, very strange. We usually meet in committees, 60 people getting together and hashing out ideas. That has stopped. Now we vote in shifts, as you might have seen. They ring the bell, and then 50 people will go in and vote, then by alphabetical order. So that has all changed. I found myself, because the nursing homes, we had a bunch of nursing homes in my district that were lit up with COVID. We lost a lot of people. There were some that, 27, 30 people passed away in Norwood at one of the health centers. Every health center has been affected, in my district. So I found myself trying to use my connections with suppliers in China, American companies like 3M, to get us masks. So I was able to get 20,000 of those N95 masks through Gillette, Procter & Gamble. So we started distributing those to Brockton Hospital, Good Samaritan Hospital, Brockton Community Health Center. So we made sure that they had the face shields and the masks, so the nurses there could do their job. So it's been surreal. It really has. We've worked very closely with Mayor Sullivan down there in Brockton. He just gets sworn in January, and then this happened. So he had the baptism of fire in terms of his responsibilities, but also with Representative Cronin and Senator Brady as well. I was with him at a couple of the Black Lives Matter events. We're just trying to hunker down and get through this. I think, ultimately we're going to have a vaccine in order for this to really be solved. But in the meantime, we got to keep people alive and make sure that, our kids and older residents are protected. But look, it's an enormous, here comes the rain. It's an enormous honor for me to represent Brockton. I'm very proud. Look, I was an iron worker for 20 years, right? I was president of the Iron Workers Union. A lot of my iron workers, the men and women from the iron workers, are from the Brockton area. We got a big contingent down there. It's a blue collar city. I'm blue collar. I strapped on the work boots for 20 years before I became a congressman. I grew up in public housing. My family, we had troubles, growing up. My dad used to say there was sometimes we had to save up to be poor. We grew up in public housing. We had a lot of challenges. So I certainly can identify with people who are struggling. And those are the people I came here to represent. And each and every day, I try to live up to the highest expectations of the people of Brockton. That's my goal. Brockton is one city, and we ought to be one country. Over 20 years, my 20-year career in Congress, I've got a 94% NAACP voting record. The exact same, we laugh about this, the exact same rating as Maxine Waters. So probably because I vote with her a lot, but yeah. So it's been an honor to serve. I try to represent everybody fairly. I try to put myself in the shoes of minority business owners and the people who are living in the housing projects where I grew up. I still represent them, and I know that they're facing the challenges that my family faced, so I can relate to that.
In terms of, Tip O'Neill always said what? All politics is local, right, Congressman? So in terms of the local politics, and I don't know if you want to get on the record or not, but did you do an endorsement with respect to the Senate race? Are you Markey or Kennedy?
Well, I endorsed Ed, but that was
You did
before
endorse
Joe
Ed.
got in the race. Yeah. So Ed came to me early on and said, we had run against each other, Ed and I.
I remember.
But we remained good friends, and we ran a very respectful race that I could hold my head high, and he could hold his head high. And at the end of the day, I respect him, and so I endorsed him. And then 6 weeks later, Joe got in the race. So you just hate to get in the middle of two friends. That's all.
Thank you for that. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Congressman Stephen Lynch coming to us from Washington, D.C. Congressman, we thank you for joining us this evening. We'll wrap up together and we'll allow you to go because you are about to get some rain, my friend.
All right. Thank you, Tony.
That's right.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you
very
so
much. All right.
Thank
Stay
you.
well now. Be safe.
Be safe. Be safe. Thank you.
Well, that was a great interview.
Yes, it was. We have a couple minutes left, my friend. So I don't know how you want to close, but any parting words?
You know how we're going to close. We're going to talk about the interview. I think he did great. I think he answered the questions. He said Black Lives Matter. I think that was important. He said that he had attended a couple of the Black Lives Matter events, especially with Senator Mike Brady that represents, oh my God, I don't know, is the second Bristol Plymouth or something like that. We had Moses Rodriguez on the other night that's running against him. I think that it's being in Congress right now, even though the Democratic Party controls the House, I think that it's tough when you have a president that is just on a daily basis is creating havoc. I covered the president's news conference. It started, I think, about 5:30, 6 o'clock. I don't quite remember. I was doing it between, because I like to go between CNN and MSNBC and Fox. I like to get the whole gamut of what everyone's saying, especially in terms of the commentaries. But it was interesting because the president is sticking to his gun with respect to the changing of the date of the election.
Yeah.
Never in the, I don't need to tell you this, doctor, never in the history of this country has a president even touched that.
I think we've seen him do a lot of things that have never happened in the history of this world.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think, that he had a lot of nerve to try to announce that on this day, such a solemn day and such a divine moment in history with the burial of John Lewis again. So it's just very troubling. But I think, Congressman Lynch was graceful in his comments, but a couple of times he mentioned, that there should be unity, that this is a very unusual time, and that we should, be one country. And I felt that was a subtle nod to, the need for civility, the need for respect. And I do think he did a great job in terms of answering the questions, especially in the middle of waiting to vote. But I think, it was great to hear a little bit about his personal background as well. And I'm glad that he had a chance to tell the folks in Brockton about his background as a laborer and his union ties. So very interesting.
Yeah, and I'm glad that he articulated very well the hold harmless provisions, because I know what hold harmless is, but I can tell you that's not the understanding of the community, because people really are believing. And remember, some of the landlords gave out 14-day notices.
That's right.
Yeah,
right.
They did do that. I mean, it was Attorney General Maura Healey that threatened to sue and to prosecute them. I think in Boston was 130 that were given out, and then another company gave out. So they did it. So these folks are really believing that these are arrears that they're owing. So I'm going to do some follow up on that, because
I think you're right. That was awesome that he detailed that, because it's the lack of information that adds to or compounds folks' vulnerability. When they don't have that information, then landlords who are callous or uncaring can take advantage of that. And I think that's some of what's been going on. So the more knowledge of these policies and measures, the better. I do wish he would have said a little bit more about, in response to my question about the undocumented. But, I think.
Well, he talked about what is it, TPA? Or TP?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
When
he talked about that.
About
and,
Haiti.
Yeah, but I think that there needs to be a much more detailed conversation. I'm hoping that people are not running away from having conversations about undocumented immigrants, because I think it's important for us to have that, continuously have that conversation and back them up and to file these lawsuits. Like the NAACP filed one against Trump administration, which was successful. So we got to keep on that. And what makes me uncomfortable is that maybe people are walking away from this conversation because it's such an election year, but this is a conversation to be had. We know in the Brockton area that there's a large amount of undocumented families that require services that they can't legally get because they're undocumented.
And
so I'm so glad.
Like you said, sorry to interrupt you. I was going to say, mentioning Brockton, the fact of the matter is that, some of the undocumented folks, their status intersects with, their perceived race, their perceived gender, right? So it's not just being Black. You might be Black and undocumented, which heightens your vulnerability, right? Or you might be Black or brown and undocumented and don't speak English, right? So you have multiple vulnerabilities. And maybe now you've lost your job. I've spoken with Isabel Lopez of the Brockton Workers Alliance, who I'm sure you worked with, right? And she will tell you about the many families, some families who, for which the whole family got COVID, and these are folks who are undocumented. Now they're unemployed, now they're sick, and there's just multiple barriers. So the challenges in Brockton are so numerous, but it's great to have you out there working for folks.
I'm trying.
Yeah, we're all trying.
It's a team effort.
That's
it's a team effort. But I'm telling you, this is what I was asking the question about education and the economics of all this. And you know this already.
Yeah.
Is that all the families that I talk to, they says, Bishop, if my kids are not back in school, I'm going to lose my job. I'm telling everybody right now, that's what I'm hearing. I'm not going to have a job.
Yeah, that's folks' biggest concern. But it's just about 8:00. So
this is 8:00.
Yeah,
we'll
wrap up.
This has been great.
This has been great, and want to remind folks in Brockton to go out to the John Lewis tribute tomorrow at 7:00 at City Hall Plaza. And as you go forward this evening and the rest of the weekend, think about the memory of John Lewis and how you can contribute to the cause of all of these things that we're talking about, because it's so important to make your voice heard. And in these elections coming up are, John Lewis said it himself, the most important elections of our lifetime.
That's what he said.
Yeah, so get informed and get out there and act in whatever way that you can. And thank you so much for joining us this evening. We wish you well. Our colleague Vedna wasn't able to join us, but we wish her well, and we wish all of you continued safety and blessings. Thank you so much.